It's an issue that's popped up many times over the years, and it's back to the forefront thanks to some concerned citizens. I'm speaking of Sunday service for Cornwall Transit. Joining me now is one of the citizens who did spearhead a petition, Jeanette Guy. Welcome to the show, Jeanette.
Yeah, hi, thank you for having me.
All right, so let's talk about why you decided to start this petition.
Well, there's two aspects to this. One is the Andy bus, handicap service that we don't have on Sunday. And I have a friend that uses that service, and we were talking about one time maybe going out for brunch or something, and that service is not available. So you almost have to eliminate that day, the Sunday, right away. I also was working with some people that don't have access to a car, and there's a lot of shift work, and they need, the Sunday shift was always a problem. They either have to pay for a cab or find a ride with somebody. I understand that this, question was brought up in the past, but now things have changed. If you look at, student in the East End, and a lot of businesses that hire students or do shift work end up being in the Brookdale area, restaurants, and even the shift work at the warehouses. So things have changed over time, and maybe it's up. It's a good time now to bring back Sunday service because a lot of people need it to go to work.
Absolutely, and that economic impact is maybe something that people don't see. They see the cost. Okay, it's going to cost the taxpayer this much to have Sunday service. But again, when you talk about the increase in ridership as well as the economic impact of having more people able to work different jobs, correct?
Yes, and if you look at the employers, now they're asking often when you apply for a job for full availability. So they will say you're available all shift, all days. So if somebody, says, no, I can't work Sunday because I don't have transportation, you don't get a job. And some of the comments I've received when I was sending out the petition was people were saying, well, if I get called in on a Sunday for a 4-hour shift, I can't really say no. So working minimum wage, you end up, working basically a couple of hours of that shift just to pay for your transportation. So it's an inconvenience. And when I looked at the reason why people say, were saying they need that service, was mostly to go to work. And I originally thought that maybe people were going to say, well, we want to go shopping, but it wasn't. It was mostly because people need to get to work.
Absolutely, and we know that other forms of transportation could be just so expensive. When you talk about taxis and other things right, like that, the bus has always been an affordable way to get to and from work for people that don't have access to the vehicle. But when you do talk about people such as your friend with the handy transit, it has to be remembered that this is literally their lifeline to the community. That this is how that they can access being able to go out into the community is having a service like handy transit.
Yeah, there's been talk lately about, downtown being vibrant and also eliminating isolation for some of the people and giving more access. But if you look at not being able to use the Sunday for the handy transit, and if I don't want to be old fashioned, but like people might want to go to church or might want to get together with their family. So, and I know that doing that petition online, I got the good and the bad and the ugly. I received a fair amount of grief about, well, it's going to cost us so much. I don't want my taxes to pay for this. But I think it's part of living in a city. Just like a garbage is a service, not everything pays for itself. And I know that we should try to, get to that as much as we can. But certain items are part of a service. And if you want to draw families and students and everything to the area, you need to provide that service. And actually, a lot of people were surprised. They're non-users, but they were surprised that Cornwall had a service, and they thought that it would cover the Sunday as well.
For sure. Now, you mentioned, of course, a lot of the feedback that you got, both good and bad. But in terms of actual signatures, how did the petition do?
Well, I know that it was mentioned that when it was brought up in front of council, that there was a lot of names on the petition, and one reason they were looking at it, also they mentioned that there was a lot of names that were not from Cornwall. So I eliminated those, and if you look at the names in the postal code that were only for Cornwall, I ended up with 450 signatures, and that is only an online petition. So it was a through Facebook. So I'm sure if I would have, put myself at the street corner on Second and Pitt, where the bus stop, and asked people, I would probably have gotten a lot more. And I know that also a counselor brought up, well, we already have a report that was done years ago. All we have to do is kind of dust it off and put it back on and be the same thing. But I think that we have to look at, if it was tried so many years ago, we have to look at it again in the context of the change in population, the change in the work type, and all that, and maybe do a trial basis, or at least get the handy bus back, or some form of option.
Absolutely, and maybe we could just finish off with that. Obviously, the petition has been submitted to council; they've accepted it. A report is forthcoming, so maybe you could talk a little bit about what you're hoping to see as council looks at this topic.
Yeah, I fully understand that it's a bad time of year to bring this up. The petition was started last year, so we didn't have COVID, and we didn't have all the financial impact of that. So I understand now, things are a little bit different. But I think that if we could look at, maybe the first thing I would like to see would be handy transit started on Sunday, and then maybe gradually looking at a possible trial basis for a Sunday. Because now they're going to say, well, we don't have, people don't ride on Sunday. Well, of course they don't, because there's no service. And maybe half of the people that ride on Saturday would ride on Sunday. Well, I think we would possibly have to try it and see how it goes.
Absolutely, and we'll be keeping an eye on that for sure as the report comes to council and the issue is debated. On that note, Jeanette, thank you so much for joining me and speaking a little bit more about this, but also thank you for taking action. Whether you agree or disagree with the notion of the petition, it's wonderful to see a concerned citizen actually do something about it rather than just make a comment. So thank you so much for doing this, and once again for joining me.
Okay, thank you for giving me a chance to discuss this.